Yes, welcome again, everyone. Cannabis news with Joe Klare for July 11th, 2018. Presented, of course, by the Marijuana Times. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org. A bunch of great articles there about the cannabis community, industry, and beyond. And if you click the video tab on marijuanatimes.org, you can find cannabis news in all its glory. If you want to do that, you can find us on Vimeo. You can find us on Apple Podcast. Make sure you search the Marijuana Times on Apple Podcast for the audio-only version of the show. And of course, if you have not heard yet, the exciting news, we have been restored to YouTube. Search the Marijuana Times on YouTube. Make sure you're a subscriber. We got giveaways coming up for our fans. Thank you all for sticking with us through the 6 or 7 week or so purge, banishment from YouTube. But we are back. Make sure you subscribe and click that little notification bell so you know when a new episode of Cannabis News has been posted. Today, talking about falling marijuana arrests in California. Also, new emergency rules for medical marijuana in Oklahoma, and a new study about dispensaries and crime. All of that coming up, of course. But first, I have to tell you the Cannabis News is brought to you by Natureside, nature-side.com. Side is spelled C-I-D-E. Check out their organic, all-natural pesticides. If you're a cannabis grower in a state where it's legal, you want to grow safe and poison-free, you don't want to use harmful chemicals on your grow, and you want to be regulatory compliant. Most states that have legal growing have pesticide requirements and pesticides regulations and lists of approved pesticides. Use the organic, all-natural pesticides from Natureside. Whoops, there we go. Little snafu. Those are the kind of things you miss if you only listen to the audio version of the show. The little graphics snafus that go on. Of course, you do get to hear me use the word snafu excessively. Not every episode. This is just a special occasion, of course. This first story we're talking about comes from marijuanatimes.org, written by yours truly. California marijuana arrests fall more than 50% after adult use legalization. Of course, you know, in January of this year, retail sales were allowed to begin in California. In November of 2016, Amendment 64 passed, legalizing adult use, growing, sales, and possession in California. Since then, between 2016 and 2017, marijuana arrests in California fell from almost 14,000 to a little over 6,000, which is a 56% drop just in 1 year, the year after adult use legalization. Of course, marijuana arrests have been falling pretty decently since 2012 in California. In fact, if you go back to 2009, before decriminalization in California, the decriminalization bill that Governor Schwarzenegger signed, there 2009 there was about 80,000 marijuana arrests. Now we're talking about a little over 6,000, less than a decade later. That's a pretty good drop. And as I mentioned in the article, you can imagine how much time that frees up for law enforcement, who were in 2009 made 80,000 arrests, and in 2017 made 6,000 arrests for marijuana. It's a drop of 74,000 arrests that police didn't make for marijuana users and possessors in 2017. It's incredible time-saving, life-saving, and non-life wasting at the very least. You're not giving criminal records to people. You're not ruining their educational opportunities, their opportunities for loans, jobs, housing, all of that stuff. It's all a very good thing. And those numbers, again, as I pointed out in the article, will continue to drop until one day, marijuana arrests will be just as rare as somebody being arrested for selling bootleg cigarettes or moonshine. Maybe we'll make a show about black market marijuana dealers because there'll be so few left, and it'll be just like moonshiners. Just people in the woods with, trucks full of marijuana in the back running from the state troopers. It'll be an exciting show. I'm excited for that show. It doesn't even exist, but I'm ready for when it does. This next story is from KJRH out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. State board votes on marijuana rules excludes smokable cannabis. Yes, we've heard this before. We heard this in Florida. After the medical marijuana bill was passed, the next year, the legislature in Florida decided to ban smokable cannabis. As we talked about yesterday, John Morgan has been in a legal battle with the state of Florida for several months over that issue, and he's even prompted him to begin the fight for recreational marijuana legalization in 2020 in Florida. The Oklahoma State Board of Health on Tuesday approved the proposed emergency rules to regulate medical marijuana. With the exception of smokable cannabis, The rules are aimed at fast-tracking the industry into business. The proposed final draft includes 20 rules that recommend how the state can govern an array of issues like licensing, who can sell and prescribe medical marijuana, inventory tracking, and prescribing medical marijuana to minors. Now, obviously, advocates in Oklahoma are ticked about the exclusion of smokable cannabis. There have been some advocates in Oklahoma that have said that big money interests that didn't want the smokable cannabis have caused the bill not to go into the state legislature. There was not a special session of the Oklahoma legislature called by the governor. We reported on that last week. And I said at the time that that's a good thing. There's nothing good going to come out of the legislature. Apparently there's activists in Oklahoma that think that it would have been better if this would have went to the legislature because somehow the legislature follows the will of the people. I don't know what evidence there is of that. Some have said that the legislature abdicated their responsibility to regulate this. More regulation and more people involved in the regulation is not going to help things. Not only would the legislature probably have banned smokable marijuana, they would have created a list of qualifying conditions. That's what I predicted last week before it was announced that there was going to be no special session in Oklahoma. That the state legislature in Oklahoma got a hold of this. There would be a list of qualifying conditions. There would be all kinds of restrictions, probably also a ban on smokable marijuana a la Florida. So I disagree with the activists who say that this should have went through the legislature. As bad as this is, and it'll probably go through some kind of legal wrangling, the same as in Florida. I don't think going to the legislature and having all those Republicans and conservatives getting their hands on this and getting involved in the regulation of this would have turned out any better than this did. The board recommended 3 changes to the proposal: eliminate the sale of smokable cannabis, require pharmacists to be present at dispensaries, and limit the number of dispensaries and locations. Obviously, we don't want limits on dispensaries and locations. That should be, the market should decide that. Whatever the demand is, that's how many dispensaries there should be. Whatever state, whatever city, wherever medical cannabis is sold, it should be based on the market. But the smokable cannabis thing, like I said, that'll probably end up in some legal wrangling. But this notion that the legislature would have done better in Oklahoma and would have made less restrictive rules, I don't buy that at all. I think not only would all of this have happened, but also there would have been narrower, because there's no qualifying conditions under Oklahoma medical marijuana. As the bill passed, 788 passed last month, there's no qualifying conditions. I am certain that the legislature would have created a list of qualifying conditions, and it would not have been good for medical marijuana patients in Oklahoma. We'll see how this goes with the board regulating, but somebody's going to regulate it. And I disagree with the smokable cannabis ban. So do activists in Oklahoma. They'll fight it in court, and we'll see what happens. It's a shame it has to be that way, but that's the way things are nowadays. The voters pass it, and then the bureaucrats and the lawmakers tinker with it, and then it goes to court, and you just have a big cluster F, as the kids say. This last story is from normal.org. A new study says dispensaries are not associated with increased criminal activity. The operation of medical cannabis dispensaries is not associated with increases in either violent crime or property crime. This is according to the findings of a discussion paper published by the IZA Research Institute. They are affiliated with the RAND Corporation, and they investigated whether the establishment of medical cannabis dispensaries in California affects local crime rates, including rates of violent crimes, property crimes, and substance abuse crimes. Authors, quote, found no evidence that ordinances allowing for medical marijuana dispensaries lead to an increase in crime. In fact, we see some evidence of a reduction in property crime because of things like, medical marijuana dispensaries tend to have a lot of cameras, a lot of security measures, and that tends to make us the neighborhood around them safer because people don't commit crime where they think they're going to be filmed. These findings are consistent with other prior studies. Authors did acknowledge an association between dispensaries and DUI offenses, a finding that is consistent with at least one other study. By contrast, data published in the American Journal of Public Health reports that dispensaries are associated with a decline in fatal motor vehicle accidents among drivers ages 25 to 44 years old. RAND investigators said our study appears to reinforce the conclusions from other studies that failed to find an increase in the type of crime predicted by law enforcement. We find no effects on burglary, robberies, or assaults, which are the types of crimes one would expect. The dispensaries were prime targets as a result of their holding large amounts of cash. As I just said, a lot of that is mitigated by security measures, the security cameras, things of that nature. So another good study reported on by Normal. As always, all the stories I talk about in this show are all linked in the description of the video. Thanks everybody for checking out Cannabis News. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. Share, like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell, all that stuff. Check us out on marijuanatimes.org as well. Thank you to nature-side.com and their organic, all-natural pesticides. I thank you all for listening and spreading the word about cannabis and watching whatever platform you listen or watch on. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on Cannabis News.